second week of the National Football League is under is under the belt for everyone. And fantasy football, there were some surprises, there were some disappointments, but all in all, I think, did anybody really come out scathed in this one? I mean, we'll talk about one particular quarterback, but anybody in particular that you looked at this and went, ooh, maybe not. I shouldn't have had that guy in my lineup this week.
You know what? I was actually pretty pleased with the things that you and I talked about from the opening weekend, heading into last weekend, week 2, right. About, Peyton Hillis getting off and starting to get his thing going. If you always have Phillip Rivers playing, and I would say probably Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Buffalo Bills, without question, the most underrated football player in the NFL. And I don't think it's close.
And the school he came from, by the way, for those of you that don't know about this young man, 5 United States presidents came from out of that school, a number of chief justices have come out of that school, and only one number 1 pick in football has come out of that school. That school is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They call it Harvard.
And only one quarterback has played in the NFL at that position, I believe. He stayed the course. After seeing what I saw of Fitzpatrick last year, I said, this guy's a good, serviceable starter. I take that back. This guy's not a serviceable starter that, had you drafted your fantasy draft again now after the first few weeks, you would not make him a backup quarterback. You would have drafted him as one of your starters. The guy is smart. He throws it on time, underrated arm strength. So if you're asking about a shocking or somebody who continues to put up numbers and will all year, because of the focus of that offense, most underrated player and a gem that if you got him, start him. If he's your backup quarterback and you got a starter that you're questioning, stick him in front of your starter, unless of course it's Brady, Rodgers, Manning, or Stafford, not Manning, or Stafford, or somebody along those lines. It's the Drew Breeses, the elite ones. You can play him in front of Manning. That might be a good idea. Either one, Eli or the hurt Peyton.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let me ask a really dumb question. If you were one of the people that drafted in your fantasy draft a guy named Felix Jones, how bad do you feel today?
Probably pretty bad. Considering I think that the Cowboys wanted to focus a little bit more on the run.
Right.
I think that we question, I think the question on Felix Jones has been durability. And when you have an injury like this, because running backs, you start to think, in fantasy, really your first 7, 8 picks, unless it's a Brady or Aaron Rodgers, are going to be running backs. And with the explosiveness that he has, that sets you back. So you better have been a smart general manager and picked a couple guys up that you say, okay, I don't have him, but I got a Tim Hightower who was my 3rd back now that I can start because he's really elevated his play. So you're a bum. But you know what? It won't be the last time. You were bummed if you drafted Peyton Manning. You're bummed if you drafted Tony Romo, which I know we'll get to in a second, at least for the time being with the injury. You don't know how long it's going to last or how severe it's going to be or how much it's going to affect his performance. But of course, when you've got a guy that you expected to get double-digit touchdowns this year, we'll see how long, and how many games or attempts that we can get Felix Jones through the course of 16 weeks. But you got some interesting starting and backup assignments this week in fantasy football, depending on who you are and who you have.
Who's your hidden gem?
For me, the hidden gem this week, and he's not a hidden gem, but I expect him to do what he did last week. Couple touchdowns, 170 yards, going against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. I think that Vincent Jackson's going to end up being one of the top fantasy receivers all year long. He had almost 200 yards receiving. I think what Phillip Rivers will continue to do is beat it up, and the Kansas City Chiefs can't stop me. So I think that you're going to get a back-to-back monster. Now, you'll start him anyway, but after a big monster week, a lot of times we have a tendency to say, well, can they go back-to-back as wide receivers with another huge week? I think he can go and get 10 more catches this week. I think it's another 100-plus yards, and Phillip Rivers will eat the Kansas City Chiefs secondary alive, and I believe Vincent Jackson's going to have a back-to-back monster week.
You played the position of quarterback for 10 years in the National Football League and along with the Canadian Football League. When you have an injury such as a Tony Romo, when someone hits you in the rib cage, now, I don't know if you've ever had cracked ribs in your career.
I have in college, and Ron Rivera, Cam Newton's coach, is the one who did it to me, so I understand.
Okay. Cracked ribs, a punctured lung in this particular case. How difficult is it did you play the next week when you had a cracked rib?
Fortunately, it was near the end, and I had a couple weeks before we got to see. I played the next game, but it wasn't right away.
Okay.
And I can remember the pain. I thought I was dying on the field. I understand the pain, and I didn't have a punctured lung. So, yes, it is think about it now, the torque when you're throwing through the football. Your rib cage is part of that upper body. We talked about throwing with the legs and firing the hips through and doing all those things. but that core with your hips, shoulders, rib cage, and the torque that you go through on every throw, let alone the hits. Let's say he doesn't even get hit one time, Dave. It's the torque of pulling your arm through and following through and being accurate. You saw how it affected him in the beginning of the game when he took the hit and then had really a first half that everybody thought, oh no, Tony's going into the tank. Well, then we find out later he's hurt, but came back. It's amazing what modern medicine can do, though. A few painkillers, a shot, you get out there, and I don't know what he's going to do about it. I know that most players in this league would do whatever they could to take the numb and the pain away and go out and play. Playing injured is one thing, playing hurt's another. Now, would I play if I was Tony? I guess if you can breathe, you'll play, and I think that's going to be his philosophy this week. I would be tempted not to start him this week, because while he plans on playing, I'm talking about if you're a fantasy owner, you have to take into account one hit, one play, and we may be seeing John Kitna the rest of the game. So if you had him or another quarterback that was like a Blaine Gabbert, for instance, who's going to start this week and play against Cam Newton's Carolina Panthers, you might take a guy like Gabbert thinking beginner's luck. Carolina really doesn't know what to prepare for. The kid can throw the football. He's healthy. He's got fresh legs. So you might start to think Redskins are 2-0, played pretty good. It's Monday Night Football. How much can Tony, the adrenaline will be flowing. So you might think, well, do I take the hidden gem? It could be a hidden gem, should I say, in Gabbert and not play Romo? Romo's a fantasy number. I mean, he puts up huge numbers. But we don't know how severe the injury is other than what they tell us as far as how long he'll be able to go or if he'll be able to play at all. So you'll make that decision come Saturday morning. Prize, and I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. I like to think I understand the position fairly well, the quarterback position. I may not have played it well, but I understand what it takes to play it well. I just wish I had the skills of some of those guys. Cam Newton for me. You know, Dave, I couldn't, in all the years I've played it and covered it and talked about it, I've never been more wrong on a guy the first 2 weeks of the season in my life. And I'll stand up and admit it. Now, I knew he was a winner. I knew he's got more poise than any rookie quarterback I've seen come in 30 years. When I talk about the poise, he's got more poise than a bunch of 10-year starting quarterbacks that have been in this league 10 years. He just keeps on, he's special. Keeps on keeping on. But I didn't think mechanically and throwing the football, he'd be able to carry a team throwing it. I knew he had great feet. But you know what's interesting? His arm's better than his feet right now. You're talking about pushing 900-plus yards or 1,000 yards in two games. I would have expected him to throw for 400 yards one game the entire year. So if you're a fantasy lover and you got Cam Newton, especially since they don't run it right now well, they're putting the whole team on his back and saying, carry us and
people how they can get a hold of you on the internet to pick up your picks and talk about fantasy football.
Well, you can there's a whole bunch. You can catch me at SeanUnfiltered.tv, and then you can also catch me at playerpress.com/unfiltered, which is where a lot of my blogs are. The fan page is Sean Salisbury Unfiltered, which is Facebook fan page, all one word. And then at Twitter, you follow me at Sean Unfiltered, and we'll give you as much opinion and no nonsense that there is and have a little fun with. But right here on SeanUnfiltered.tv, you'll get all the fantasy stuff. I save it for this show right here, and it's only going to get better all year long. And we'll give you the sleepers, the gems, the overrated, the underrated, and we'll make it worth your while. And hopefully make you the champion of your league.
And it's Fantasy Football Unfiltered. Sean Salisbury.